was coming. But when you actually add 2 or then 3 copies, your deck becomes very transparent, and then people not only can play around them, but like you said on the draw, it's pretty god-awful to have multiple syncopates. So I think you can play 1 effectively, but I don't think any more than 1 is the right call, especially like you said, being on the draw in this format is already bad enough. I mean, look what happened to the Esper player.
Yeah.
She got run over just because she went second that game. I think if she was going first, she would have had a much better shot. But, you know.
We cut to our third match of round 1. Jonathan Edwards playing Boros aggro against Johndale Beety, our Vorthos writer for Star City Games, playing green-white aggro. Beaty's going to be on the play for game number 3. Going to lead off with a Temple Garden, and we'll see what he starts his first turn with. But a pretty stock green-white deck here. You know, you've got your Moon Satyrs, you've got your Experiment Ones, your Fleecemane Lions, your Smiters, Advent of the Worms. A couple fun cards here in Pelucranos World Eater. Normally you don't find this in green-red, or excuse me, in green-white. You normally find it in green-red. Sign of Vitu-Ghazi, another new card we find. And then the Boros aggro deck, as Edward's going to start off with a Sacred Foundry and a Boros Elite, looks pretty reminiscent of what Lundqvist won with last week.
Yeah, one thing I don't see in here is a Johnny. I guess is that card not very popular. I mean, I lose it online all the time, so.
Oh, we saw 3 of those last weekend in Lundqvist's deck.
Oh, it looks like
he was actually pretty fond of it, but does not look like Edwards is going that direction.
Oh, excellent. Well, I mean, I'm happy to see that. So that card is, when it was printed, I was like, oh no, this card is a control killer because it's just 5 loyalty to jump to. It's just too much for control decks to deal with. And like I said, the Ashiok was a little bit better. A Planeswalker on 3 that goes to 5 loyalty, and it was good against control. That's a nightmare.
Catch up on the board state here. Experiment 1 going to come in here for Beety, as you do see a Selesnya, a Gilgate, a Temple Garden, and a Plains in play for him. A couple cards in hand. Edwards with his Scry from Temple of Triumph kept it on top. You see a Boros Charm in his hand, a Boros Elite in play, and a Sacred Founder as well. Beety going to cast a Selesnya Charm before damage to get himself a 2/2 Vigilance token and evolve that Experiment 1. So he's creating a nice board presence here as Reed Duke is going to come into play. The evolution trigger will resolve.
Yep, the Shining Knight comes in. Definitely, he's a good match player, I'd say.
Yeah. Now this is a direction that people might move towards now, is green-white, because it has a perceived good matchup against, you know, mono red aggro, Boros type decks. Its creatures are bigger. It has access to unflinching courage. Is this a direction? I know you don't play aggressive decks, of course, but is this a direction you think that people should be moving towards to beat them?
Yeah, and luckily, I think playing against them kind of gives me a similar kind of outlook on it all too. I think green-white is dominant against the other aggro mirror matches. However, it's that whole paper rock scissors thing, because when you're green-white and you play against Esper, it's a much harder matchup than if you're playing the red deck. You don't have that reach that the red decks have. So yeah, I think that's when Magic's healthy. Well, I'll play this deck, which is pretty good against this one. However, I sacrifice a little bit of this matchup. That's when Magic is really, really fun to watch.
So Soldier of the Pantheon going to come down here for Edwards, leaving 2 mana up. Can represent a lot of things from those 2 mana. Again, Boros Charm, Brave the Elements, even some people opting for Lightning Strike as well. So we'll see what Beety does choose to play around here, as he's going to attack with Reed Duke and Experiment 1.
Yeah, and Brave the Elements, I'm having a few nightmares about that card still. So card is just pretty good. Counterspell, pretty much. And so he has a Boros Charm, so he has the ability to Indestructible here if he needs to, or Double Strike.
So it's going to be a Rootborn Defenses. I thought it might be a Boon Satyr, but Rootborn Defenses is going to be placed in the stack. We'll see. Edward's going to play a Boros Charm, likely for Indestructible, so nothing is actually going to leave. But Beety will gain another Soldier token here. Yeah,
so obviously Beety gets the advantage here in this trade-off. Gets a free dude. It looks like, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I was Jonathan, I guess he doesn't really have much else to do with his turn there. But that really didn't advance his state too much. Didn't lose all of his guys, at least.
See a Fiendslayer Paladin off the top to go along with a Banisher Priest. He's got a Brave Elements, another mystery card hanging out in his hand. So we'll see how he chooses to develop the board here. Banisher Priest quite good against green-white. They have no way to get off the board, obviously. Yeah. So those Fiend Hunter type effects are going to be really, really good. And he's going to take care of Experiment number 1, the creature that can grow to be the largest.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that play, too. I mean, he's kind of like attracted to hit a token that doesn't come back at all. But like you said, green-white don't really have a way to remove Banisher Priest in general. So there's no need to do that.
Now, one thing that's ended up happening here for Edwards and the Boros deck in general is that, one thing that we didn't see last weekend at all is a Boros deck on the defensive. Yeah. Edwards has had to slow down greatly in this game. You have a card like Boros Elite in your deck. You want to be attacking always. It's not a good card on defense. Battalion, oddly enough, does not trigger on defense. So it's going to be a tough spot for him here, as Beety is going to come in with 2 copies of Reed Duke. Tokens have Vigilance, so they will not be tapped. But you see that Edwards really doesn't have very many good attacks. That Banisher Priest, even though it did take care of an Experiment 1, it can't attack or block profitably.
Yeah, so maybe hitting one of the tokens might have been a little more profitable. This is actually where I think the talent of playing aggro comes in, and I also like to pick fun on aggro players once in a while. But when you have an aggro versus aggro matchup, it's not just, you know, attack, 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 attack. You really got to plan out moves. You got to really plan out a way to win, because these boards can get real cluttered and real hard to maneuver around really quickly. So.
And we'll see if Edwards can work his way through this kind of board stall that we're in. Both players do have cards in their hand. But, you know, there are some cards here that Edwards really needs to dodge because his deck does just not line up very well against him. A card like Advent of the Worm is an absolute nightmare for him to play against.
Yeah, yeah. And looks like, I don't think he has it in his deck here. I think this is, yeah, he's playing a slightly different list than what we saw last week, because Advent is a card that you think you just slam in a deck like this, right? Oh, he has 4. Never mind.
Yeah, Beety's version does have 4.
Just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah, because I mean, root-bound defenses in that card is just pretty much a 1-2 punch against these Boros decks.
Here is a Boon Satyr here from Beety on Edward's Zen Step. So an evolution trigger on Experiment 1, going to turn that into a 2/2.
That card is a card I didn't really think would be that great, and then after playing around with it, playing against it, it's actually super good.
Yeah, a lot of people are kind of moving on to the Boon Satyr train here. I mean, if people, again, do move towards green-white, this is a card that really does make it quite potent, as Beety's draw step was a copy of Advent of the Worm, and now he's going to get in with all of his creatures. A pretty safe attack.
Yeah, definitely. And we know that Jonathan has a Brave the Elements, and I think another Boros Charm, so he can actually set up some kind of blocks that aren't the worst here. Probably can just line up his Banisher Priest, block some things, kill 2 guys, and then indestructible as creatures. So if I was him, yeah, I'd block, you know, 2, the Soldier on the Boon Satyr. Either way is fine. And then he's going to go indestructible here and kill a couple guys.
So it looks like Banisher Priest is going to go on the Boon Satyr. You've got Soldier of the Pantheon going on to Experiment 1. Beety going to tap some mana. Looks like it's going to be Advent of the Worm. So he wants to trigger Evolution. He wants to make sure that Edwards does gain a life there, too, from his Soldier of the Pantheon, because it is a multicolored spell.
Yep. Another kind of cool ability attached to the Soldier as well, and that's why you see Wafo play that card, not just because it blocks multicolored creatures, but gaining life, it's tough to come by in the Esper deck, so this is one of those things that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I couldn't really figure out why Wafo was playing Soldier after the Pro Tour, because, you know, from my perspective, you know, there weren't a lot of people playing green-white, so it was like, what was that in there for? But it was kind of a hedge against, like, if people are playing green-white, I want to make sure I'm actually pretty good against that matchup.
Yeah.
So that's exactly why you found Soldier in his sideboard.
Yeah, a lot of times you have a lot of sideboard slots that are just dead, because you can't board in 11 cards versus, you know, a matchup. So you have 4 slots, so you're like, just in case.
Yep. So Brave the Elements going to name green. Boon Satyr going to bite the dust. Banisher Priest going to stay alive. Experiment 1 is a 3/3 now because of Advent of the Worm, so Soldier and it kind of look at each other for a little while, but those 2 redo tokens are going to come across for 4 points of damage. Beety does also add a 5/5 to his board, so he does have right now creature superiority.
Oh, yeah.
And again, when you're using Brave the Elements defensively instead of offensively, you know, to either counteract a removal spell or for its falter effect, that's when you know you're in trouble as a Boros player.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Boros on defense, a lot less impressive than offense as well. I think he has, let's see, is that Fiendslayer Paladin? A lot of these Boros cards, again, they're just not that potent against these green decks. I mean, they're all 2/2s.
A Banisher Priest lining up pretty well here.
Yeah,
Going to take care of the Advent of the Worm token. That one's great.
Yeah.
And that card's actually picking up in play right now, too, because it is so good against a multitude of decks. It's good in the mirror. It's good against Mono Blue Devotion, taking care of Master Waves and getting all those elemental horses out of the way.
Yep.
So there are a lot of positive things and positive reasons to be playing Banisher Priest and having access to white mana right now. But against green and white, I mean, it just doesn't block very well. Ooh, we're going to the red zone here.
Yeah, yeah.
A little bit surprising to see this attack.
Yeah, it looks like he's willing to get rid of that Banisher Priest, you know, give him back his experimental one, which is not exactly the worst thing in the world. Maybe Jonathan is starting to realize maybe I can't win sitting back here against a deck with cards like Advent of the Worm. So maybe this is sort of a, let's see if we get some damage in, maybe set up a better attack later on.
So what Edwards does here is he kind of clears things away. Experiment 1's going to come back to Beety because Banisher Priest did die. Boros Lead's going to come across for 3, but Beety's going to untap with a 3/3 and a 1/1. And looks like just a couple cards in his hand as he's going to draw a card. He draws another copy of Selesnya Charm, his second one of the game.
Yeah, it's just, this is a tough road for Jonathan here. It's just the deck, like the creatures, again, just don't match up too well. However, he's got a few cards in his hand, so we'll see.
Beety's going to attack here with his 2 copies of Experiment 1. Again, one is a 3/3, one is just a 1/1. We'll see if he does have an instant speed way to evolve these guys and get across some more damage.
Yeah, I think Jonathan's going to block here the experimental one anyway, the 1/1 to make John do it, because even if he evolves, he trades. So I'm not super against that block there.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think that's a block that I would want to make. I mean, obviously the fear too is if he does have a copy of Selesnya Charm in his hand, which we knew that he drew, then you actually win in combat. But are you okay trading a Selesnya Charm for a copy of Banisher Priest?
I think so.
That's the question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Additionally, we could just very easily see Beety just, instead of the +2/+2 and trample mode, we could see him just play Selesnya Charm as a 2/2 token and say, all right, I'll trade your Experiment 1 for my Banisher Priest, and I have a 2/2 that is Vigilance, which is probably better in this matchup.
Yeah. Yep. Either way, he'll force John to do it here.
So there is Selesnya Charm. He's going to go +2/+2 and trample. So come across, total damage is going to be 4 damage dealt to Edward. It's going to knock him down to 5.
Yep. All right, so Jonathan needs 2. I'm looking at his list here.
Looking for outs?
Good outs. I think Boris Reckner is a good card against John here. Not exactly a Hail Mary destroy you card, but it does something. Besides that, you don't really have any trumps for the aggro mirror match here. He's got 2 copies of Heliod, God of the Sun, 4-mana card, but also, I mean, if he gets that going, not the worst big indestructible monster.
So Soldier of the Pantheon and Daring Skyjack are the cards that are put into play here for Edward. So he does have 3 creatures in play. A 3/1 or a 2/1. There can be some trading that does take place here. But again, his forces just keep dwindling, and Boros is a deck that wants to have a lot of creatures on the board.
Yeah, I think we saw when Jonathan kind of got that big alpha strike in, he lost a lot of resources there, and it didn't do a whole lot of damage. It only knocked him down 3 life here. So without those critical massive creatures, it's going to be tough for Jonathan to win.
Beety coming into the red zone here. 3/3 Experiment 1, 1/1 Experiment 1. See if he again does have any instant speed ways to make these creatures better. Could even have a card like Rootborn Defenses. And this is what makes the green-white deck pretty good, is that you can attack like this with mana up, and your opponent has to play around a multitude of things.
Yeah. Rootbound Defenses is not only good against this deck, it's really good against control decks that depend on that Supreme Verdict to wipe the board here. And not just this season, last season, that's a card that has definitely blown me out a few times.
Beety going to go reaching for mana.
Say Advent of the Worm coming.
Oh boy, this is a complete blowout here. So yes, you do get to trigger your Soldier and go up to 6. Advent's going to come into play. 2 Evolve triggers are going to go on the stack. So Experiment 1's going to turn to a 4/4, beats a Skyjack in combat. The other one's going to turn into a 2/2, beats Boros Elite in combat. So a great turn there for the green-white player.
Yeah, again, John's been attacking every turn with lots of mana up and full, a bunch of cards in his hand. So Jonathan should have seen something happening there. I don't think, he's definitely not going to just trade off these 2 guys for his 2 guys.
Beautiful off the top here for Edwards. Again, his hand is a Boros Charm and a Fiendslayer Paladin, but he is certainly behind the 8 ball right now. And as good as a card as Fiendslayer Paladin does not line up great on this board state.
No, it's obviously the protections are off here on the card. Not really protections, pseudo protections. The first strike and all that stuff's not too bad. However, it's still, again, a 2/2 against a deck that has, 15 15s, it looks like, in there, comparatively speaking. The creatures, 15. They're just humongous guys here.
So Beaty's going to draw a card, and I have a feeling he's going to say, let's go to my attack step.
Yep.
And everybody going to turn sideways, or just these 2? Fiendslayer Paladin can block that, in theory, it can block that 2/2 Experiment 1.
I'm sure there's more fun to be had, though, with trickery. More trickery to be had. So he's going to go ahead and block here, and I don't think it's going to be the trade that he wants, So here we go. Let's see what happens. Thinking to block. Yep. All right, so he's going to block the 2/2 in front of the 5/5 Worm. So he's got to have, maybe it's a chump block here. But it's trample, so it's not going to do too much. Yeah, that 2/2 in front of that 5/5 is not going to do anything.
It'll actually, it'll end up trampling basically for 1 point of damage, because he's going to gain 2 and then you have to deal 2 lethal. So Advent of the Worm, blocking like this, will deal 1. So we can put Edwards at a virtual 5 right now.
Yeah. I think, obviously we've dug ourselves in a hole here. I think you're still trying to block to kill here. He's at 6, though. It's just not much you can do. Basically, we're just blocking to survive, it looks like.
Yeah. Nice. See if Beety does have any instant speed stuff. Looks like he has more instant speed things. Another copy of Advent of the Worm. Okay. Well, winning this game was going to be very hard for Edwards, and he is going to extend the hand. So John Dale Beety does defeat Jonathan Edwards. Green-white aggro defeats Boros aggro 2-1. And what we have seen here is a display of aggro decks everywhere here in Dallas.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those. I hate it when we get to just pick who's going to win right before the match.
Okay.
However, a lot of times with these paper rock scissors formats, which I like paper rock scissors formats, you have these decks, green white versus Boros. Before it even starts, we're like, green white's probably going to win. It's
Sure.
going to win. When you have Boros versus mono black, or excuse me, mono red versus mono black, mono red. 8 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, up there is going to beat the mono black deck. And then Esper. You have red against Esper. We easily predicted that winner as well, because in this format, you can't just go, all in with a deck and then hope